inviting me. The MMS mission, as many of you know, was launched on March 12th of this year. The payload is in commissioning, and come the first part of September, the mission will enter its prime science phase. And today my goal is to help the members of our science community understand how they can engage in this mission. There are many people attached to the mission, attached to an instrument team, but there are many people who are not. And so how can you engage in this mission as time goes on? That's something that I really want people to understand as we end the talk. This is the gym-invited tutorial, the student-invited tutorial. And as such, I'm really addressing a lot of my remarks to the students of our community. And so many of you will already know this information, but for everyone that's entering our field, I really want you to understand what strategic missions mean to NASA and how you can participate in those. And in fact, I was especially honored to receive this invitation just as this NASA flagship was launched. And the reason for that is that 34 years ago, in 1981, I started in this community just as the flagship mission of that day was launched, which was Dynamics Explorer. And so I thought to myself, well, what would I have wanted someone to say to me back then, going forward into working with these missions? How can you become involved in a mission? What is your future in this type of heliophysics research? So let me share just a few things about the history of this mission. It's not much different than the history of a lot of NASA missions. The processes and the timelines are not that much different. Every NASA mission starts with what is called a formulation authorization document. When you are looking forward to missions in the future, if the FAD has not been written and signed, that mission isn't going anywhere yet. So that's one of the things you always want to check when you're thinking about working on a new mission. Check to see if the FAD exists yet. In this case, the formulation authorization document was signed in 2002. So that was really the official start of MMS at NASA. So it took 13 years to get to this place, and that is not unusual for missions of this size. So when you're thinking about the future, when you're thinking about, you're out of school, you're out of your postdoc, you're working, it's time to start now on that mission of the future. So always think that far ahead. And even before we get to that point, these missions always start with a strategic plan. And I note the public laws there that actually require this of government agencies. You might want to look those up. It's really fascinating. The Government Performance Result Act, public law. I may be the only one with the sheets. It requires strategic planning. And as far as I can tell, MMS showed up very early in NASA's strategic plans, and this was in the 1997 Sun-Earth Connection Roadmap. So the people in this room that started this mission started that long ago. And this is a page from that roadmap, and it's a little blurry. That's because the actual original document is that blurry. It only exists in hard copy at this point. I can't find an electronic one right now. It actually is that blurry. But you'll see that magnetospheric multiscale is right there in the current line of solar terrestrial probe missions. You'll see that the missions before it, NASA has managed to build and launch. Time, of course, is still in operation. Solar B, now known as Canode. Stereo is in operation, and now we're launching magnetospheric multiscale. You'll see the next missions are something that we're not seeing in development at this point. There are new strategic plans, it is not clear to me right now, when I think about all of the work that NASA centers and other institutions put into these planning for these missions that are now in orbit, that we're doing the same kind of planning these days. And I hope that we can get back to that level of planning in the next couple of years. I just wanted to share this personal journey with you for a moment. I mentioned that I started with Dynamics Explorer in 1981. I got to work on Polar, Image, Geotel, Themis, the Van Allen probes, and now MMS. And so for all of the students here, when you think about your career, this is when you're starting with a new mission, I hope. I hope that you're able to get involved with MMS and that is your first mission. You are here in your career. 30 years is going to pass, and you're going to have all kinds of missions in front of you that you may not even be able to conceive of right now. But I hope that you're going to be one of those people. You're going to be one of those people that spend a great deal of time now planning for those missions of the future. You know, are you going to be one of those scientists that can think long term? The people who came together to make that first 1997 roadmap had a wonderful vision. A lot of those missions have been able to be built. And I hope that our current strategic planning is considered to have the same kind of vision. And if it doesn't, we need to get together and start work on that. There are a lot of scientists who spent a great deal of time and effort to develop the hardware for use by everyone else in the community. And I hope that there are people in this room who now will take up that job and take it forward. It's really not too early to start thinking about that and to engage in that level of strategic thinking and service to the community. Okay, so enough about that. Let's go back to MMS. You want to engage on MMS? This is the leadership team for MMS. These are the people who are in charge of the instruments, who are in charge of the operations, and who have responsibility for the budget to get these things done. There is a science working group, and the PI for that, and the science working group chair is Jim Birch. I believe he was here last year talking in detail about this mission. You'll see many other community leaders here. Everyone that works on this mission can trace their connection to one of these leaders. I mean, you may be a student who is already connected with a team, or you may work for somebody who is at least tenuously connected to one of these teams. And if so, your involvement with the mission will likely evolve very quickly and naturally. But if you are not connected with one of these teams, I need you to know that NASA is absolutely committed to these data sets being open and available for anyone to use. And there are many institutions and scientists that are connected to the teams, and you should be able to find a collaborator somewhere which will allow you to work with the team. There is a mission book that has been in development. Those papers are online now. They'll be published as a book a little bit later. That is a very good place to start to understand what is intended for this mission and what kind of science that, that was an interrupt, wasn't it? Email coming on. Back to the mission book. That is a really good place to understand what is intended that's a very good place to start. One thing that is very important for me to convey to everyone is what the focus of the mission is, and some of the limitations that are coming up that may or may not be known to everyone. The MMS team, because they proposed to NASA for this mission, they actually proposed a very focused mission. And these are the science goals that this team is committed to fulfilling. It's understand the microphysics of magnetic reconnection by determining the kinetic processes occurring in the electron diffusion region that's responsible for collisionless magnetic reconnection, and especially how that reconnection is initiated. There's 3 sub-goals under that. And as we go forward in time, everyone who looks at this mission, who looks at the orbits, that looks at the capabilities then of the instrumentation, they will know that there is a great deal more that can be accomplished with this mission. There are many more science topics that you would be able to address, many more regions of interest. What I need you to know is that this leadership team I just showed you, they have to be laser focused, however, on these objectives. And there may be times when you become quite frustrated with the team because they are very focused on this, and sometimes maybe you can't hear other things going on. There are 2 regions of the geospace environment that this mission will be targeting, both the dayside magnetopause boundary and the nightside neutral sheet. And really, the operations of the mission are geared toward these 2 regions. There's 2 orbit phases to accomplish this. In the first year and a half of the mission, the apogee is at 12 RE. We'll be skimming the dayside magnetopause twice. We will start in September, skim the dayside magnetopause, and then stay in that configuration until we're able to skim the dayside magnetopause again. Now, here's something that I know people have hinted on, but it hasn't been very clear. As we go around the night side region during this first year, I think we call that phase 1X, is that, and you notice it's like 1X, oh dear, that is not part of our prime science mode. There are instruments that may not be able to be operated during that time. And that's going to be very disappointing as we go forward, if that indeed has to be the case. Some of the instruments, and especially the fast plasma instrument, has some parts on board that are considered to have a limited lifetime. And so during the very first year, year and a half, maybe even up to 2 years of the mission, we have to run that instrument as if it has a consumable on board, which is the runtime of some of those parts. And so as time goes on, it's going to be very important for everyone to keep in touch with the leadership team, to check the websites. We'll try to make it very clear, what the plans are, how the instruments are operating so that we can operate this mission in the manner everyone would wish that we could. The second phase is when we raise the apogee up to 25 RE. Then we'll be concentrating on the night side neutral sheet region. If MMS is fortunate, then we will be able to put the mission, we will be able to continue at that formation for at least another year or 2. We were able to fill up the gas tanks, that's just, as much as we were able to. And with good conservation of fuel, we should be able to have an extended mission. And at that time, when we go into extended mission, assuming the operation of the instruments was smooth and we're not seeing any part failures, we would be able to operate the instruments on a more continuous basis would be our hope. The other part of the science commitment that we have is that for science success, in 2 years, plus a year of data analysis, that core team is committed to obtaining at least 16 magnetic reconnection events of these various types. And so one thing that this team has to do with the resources that they are given, and when I say resources they're given, I mean funding, I mean workforce, and we mean fuel as well. We have to devote our resources into collecting these reconnection events and then spending the money on the analysis and discoveries that come from those. There is no doubt that this mission can do a great deal more, but the core team has to be focused on these events. So that means that in some ways you might see that as limiting, but for a lot of the community, what that means is that there's a great deal of opportunity in other areas. And so I hope as time goes on that those that are not associated with the core team will carry other types of discoveries forward for the success of the mission, the broader success. Coming back, you may think that, well, getting at least 16 events, that should be very straightforward. It hasn't always been obvious that that would be straightforward. A lot of work went into estimating how many events that we could get, given the orbital trajectories that we have, given the resources that we have. And as we go forward, this is an estimate of how many magnetopause crossings that we believe that we're going to get in this during the mission. And in this case, this is an estimate for this first dayside pass of the mission. We believe it looks like there's over 1,000 magnetopause crossings that we may be able to capture. And our goal with our resources is to try to bring down the data, the high-resolution data for all of those magnetopause crossings. I'm going to tell you in a few minutes what our limitations are on bringing down the highest resolution data, but we do hope that we'll be able to bring down every magnetopause crossing. We also spent a long time estimating how many events that we would have in the night side neutral sheet. In this case, it looks like we should have at least, the dwell hours are here, about 287 at least dwell hours. It's going to be much more difficult to bring down all of that high resolution data, given our resources. So I tell you this because we believe, these are the regions that we are focused on for the mission. Given our resources, we believe that we can bring down the highest resolution data for most of these events. What if you're interested in something outside of those events? That's going to be much more difficult to bring down to the ground. And we'll talk about our data limitations in a few minutes. But it may or may not be possible for the mission to address every other type of event that you may be interested in for the highest resolution data. But the regular data is looking pretty darn good too, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see if we can get more time on the DSN antennas. There may be times when we could run special campaigns in future years, once our core commitments have been met. And so we'll have to keep up a dialogue with the community continuously through meetings like this to make sure that we can address all of those science topics that this mission really can provide forward momentum on. Here I just list the instruments. I think this is something that's been presented many, many times. The field suite, which is headed up by Roy Torbert, and this has been just about fully commissioned, and they are in pretty much continuous operation. When you think about, hey, we launched in March, where's all the data, folks? What's taking you so long? I'm going to tell you what's taking us so long. There's really good reasons for this. But the fields data is being collected pretty continuously at this point, and that data is something that the teams are presenting. The fast plasma instrument consists of a great deal of equipment. And I'll use the fast plasma instrument as an example to tell you why it takes from March to the end of August to do commissioning. And I hope I can get that thought across. So far, the fast plasma instrument has taken one orbit of data, about 12 hours of data, 12 hours of burst data, high-resolution data, on one spacecraft. We have half the payload commissioned so far, and we will be commissioning the other half in the coming months. The energetic particle instruments, those are doing very well. They are in an almost continuous operation, only being hindered at this point by some eclipse power issues, but otherwise energetic particle data, that's coming along very well. They're commissioned. HPCA, this is the composition instrument. That had to outgas for quite a while before they could start commissioning. But they have checked out those instruments, and now those will be commissioned in the next month or so as well. ASPOC has some normal issues it's going through. That's still in commissioning, and of course the SOC and theory modeling folks are in full operation at this point. I just wanted to show, we always have to show this picture. It just shows all of the equipment on board, every one of the spacecraft. There's so many boxes on board. And this is only an illustration to say, when you think about commissioning a spacecraft, every one of these subcomponents have to be brought up and have many activities to be run through to check out the equipment, to check out the data flow. All of those contacts are in real time. And so if you think about the real-time contacts and the people that have to go through every one of these instruments, one after another, across 4 spacecraft, that is the reason it takes months to commission, and to do that very slowly. I'll use FPI because that's something I've been working with just as an illustration. This is the hardware that we have on board. There are actually 16 dual electron spectrometers. That means there's actually 32 of them. And they all have different operating points. They have different microchannel plate efficiencies. They have different, what else is involved? The calibrations that were done on the ground, the in-flight calibration, all has to be done separately for the 32 electron spectrometers and the 32 ion spectrometers. And we're doing that with real-time contacts. We actually have a team of 6 people that during the commissioning time are working full-time on this, and very often double shifts because the contacts can come at any time of the day or night. And so they've been doing that all summer and will continue for the rest of the summer. Every team has this kind of challenge. And so that is why when you want to know, goodness, they launched in March, where's the data? We're working on it as fast as we can. This is an illustration, and I know you can't see the details. I just want you to get a feel for the commissioning timeline for MMS as a whole. And if you look here, the lines of this graph are all of the different subsystems that need to be commissioned. And we started here on the 15th of March. We started as have to do over this month. This ends in August, okay? So March to the end of August. And so all of these activities, to date, because we're right here in the middle of this gray area right now, okay? Right here in the middle of the graph is where we are today. All of these activities have been completed. And we have another half to go here. What is that gray period? Well, we're on an eclipse break, as we call it. When the government shutdown happened, remember the government shutdown? That shutdown developed into MMS as well. And our launch was going to be last October. And our commissioning, of course, was just going to go with no break. But when our launch was delayed until March, that put our commissioning right over a period of very long eclipses. And whenever there are long eclipses on a satellite, you very often can't run every instrument. And so during this period of time, we're on break and coming to meetings. But, we've got things pretty well going, and now we have another set of commissioning. Like I said, the second half of those 64 spectrometers will be fully commissioned. There's several times in here where we're going to be taking full orbits of data and be able to bring down a lot of burst data. I know for the fast plasma instrument, there are at least 5 of those periods planned coming up. And so the orbits are in a fortunate position for science right now. It may not be our core science, but there's still some really interesting things to see. And so over this period of time, I think you'll start seeing much more data coming down from the instruments in a combined fashion. This yellow period is what we call our interference campaign. As you know, on any mission, subcomponents might be able to interfere with each other. We'll be doing intercalibration between instruments and interference mode types of investigations to be sure we understand how everything is operating in detail and be able to deal with any noise sources to clean up the data thoroughly before we start that first day side pass. So I hope that gives you a real feel for how we're doing, coming along, and when data will be available. In a real sense, data will not be coming available to the MMS team until the fall. That's when we will start routine operations. Coming back to FPI as an example, and also just to give you a feel for how interesting commissioning can be, I just wanted to show you the first orbit of data that the fast plasma instrument collected. On this side, I have the electron measurements, and on this side are the ion measurements. This was taken on May 7th. It's about 12 hours of data. And these are the spectrometers. This is just MMS 3 data that, I think it was MMS 3 as opposed to 2. Was it 2 or 3? I think it's 3. So what's really interesting here to me, because, this really is the first measurements from these spectrometers. At this point, the only corrections that are in the data are the corrections that we put together using the ground calibrations from the various spectrometers. When you look at this, this looks like, a typical energy spectrogram that we have seen from many missions. But what's very different about it is that it really is a composite of all 8 spectrometers brought together. And in this case, the fact that it's looking, really nice is really a testament to the ground calibration. We took this data, we actually used more quiet parts of the orbit to do in-flight calibration as well. So this is what we call our uncorrected data, and I think it looks really, really nice. I'm going to show you some of the burst data in a minute, and it looks just as clean. I'm just very excited to see what our data looks like when we take a few more orbits after we have our in-flight calibration applied as well. I think it's going to be the kind of data that we're really going to want for these new studies. One thing that happens, of course, on any mission is that you might have some extra signals coming in and have to deal with. In the case of the fast plasma instrument, we do have a little photoelectron signal right here at our lowest energy channels. For the electrons, this isn't unusual for electron instruments in our field. We really hoped we didn't do the same, but here it is. So whenever we're looking directly at the sun, we are getting some glint into the instrument at the very lowest energy channels. That will be a challenge for us all as we go forward and use this data. So there is going to be data, and this is the case for most any instrument. And students, you really want to pay attention to this. Data that is put out and you pick up and use directly from the Science Data Center is going to be calibrated and cleaned up as fast as well as anyone can do with automated processing. And in the case of the fast plasma instrument, if we go ahead and calculate, say, moments of the distribution, and we don't take out some of these spurious signals, you're going to get densities that look kind of high, which is why I have it right here. Don't those density numbers look a little bit high for out there at 15 Earth radii? And that's because, you have to take some of that out. Certainly we're going to be doing that as part of our data processing, but when it comes down to looking at specific events, it's always important to work with the instrument team on that data so they can be sure and point out little extra features that you might find, and to help you really correct that data so that it becomes publication quality. And so when you're looking at quick loop data, if you look at even level 2 data, be sure to stop, pause, and be sure that every signal that you find interesting is going to be a signal of the environment and not a signal of the instrument response in some way. So we'll all want to be sure and look at that, especially with instruments of this resolution. It's very possible to have some noise in the data set that needs to be taken care of. This I wanted to show is the burst data for the fast plasma instrument. During that time when we were taking what we call our burst calibration, we have all of these spectrometers. We really need to adjust them with respect to each other. Some people call this the first video plasma analyzer, and that's because of movies like this. We really are looking at the whole sky every 30 milliseconds. And so in this movie, you'll see this red line. See the red line marching across the movie? That's the direction of the sun. Okay, so we actually just de-spin this, and then we let the sun spin around. But you'll notice right at our very lowest energy channels, see those photoelectron signals? Isn't that sad? But you see that we really get one right when the sun crosses each of the spectrometers. And it's a little wider or a little narrower depending on the direction coming in. So we have that sun signal, but that's something that I think that we can extract from the data, at least on an event-by-event basis, very easily. We also have this more constant photoelectron signal at the very lowest energy channel. This is something that we believe that when ASPOC, the spacecraft potential control, is operating, we believe that that will be majorly attenuated. We have some indications of that from some previous operations during the calibration phase. So we're really looking forward to seeing about 12 hours. If you're outside of that, no highest resolution data, just regular resolution. And so depending on what kind of phenomenon you're interested in, there may or may not even be that highest resolution data stored on board. Because we are using the Deep Space Network, which is subscribed by many missions, we're only going to be able to bring down, are you ready for this? Have you heard this number? We're going to be able to bring down about 20 minutes of those 12 hours of burst data per day. Now, we can store 3 days of orbits. We can bring it down in any order we want. We can bring down 40 minutes one day and 10 minutes another day. We can divide that up any way we want. But that's actually the amount of that highest resolution data. And remember what the focus of this team is. Reconnection events. In the fall, we're going to be bringing down, we hope, every magnetopause crossing. But it's going to be very narrow periods of time to fit within this data interval. We do bring down all of our fast survey data, which is perfectly fine resolution, as good as any other mission. We also are going to bring down our slow survey data. That's pretty slow survey. But I wanted you to be aware of these limitations as time goes on, and we'll try to put information on the website that makes it clear when we do and do not have data and what's available, and what's coming up as far as any special campaigns might be. Something to just end up with, certainly as time goes forward, I know when I first started out in this field, I was laser focused on the mission that was in front of me, and I didn't look at any other mission. It was Dynamics Explorer all the way for a while, and it was polar. You may be starting with just MMS, and it's perfectly fine to concentrate on one mission. But you want to be aware that there are all kinds of other missions still out there, very capable, and looking at the system view will be something that is going to be absolutely wonderfully interesting to do. It may not be the core focus of the MMS team right away, but there are fortunate conjunctions from all of these other missions. And of course there was some special session on that earlier this week. I hope you were able to attend that. I'm going to end up just by giving you the address to the website. That'll be available for you. It is looking a little sparse right now. The website really doesn't finish commissioning until September. I know it's so frustrating to know, well, it's not till September that everything gets commissioned. But things are going up every day. You can certainly find out where the orbit is every day. Data will start becoming available much later in the year for the public, or for the instrument teams. It will start trickling in after September. So I'll just end with this eye chart, which shows all of our space assets right now. And with luck, this mission, as have many others, will supply us with data for many years to come. There is no doubt that it is always a challenge to find the resources needed to support all the investigations we would want to do. I can only encourage the students to persevere through all of the times that are coming before you with funding crises, with mission crises. There are many people in this room, including me, who have been in the business for decades. And there are times when fortune in your career, and I hope that this mission becomes a big part of it. And in 30 years, maybe you can say, I started with MMS, and that was